Hello and welcome to the Batch Report, the show where we sit down and talk about the Bad Batch every week, and this week was episode 3, Replacements. This episode kind of messed up on my Disney Plus feed. It just said episode 3 for the title, and I was really confused.
I remember that, like, when Mandalorian came out, that's what they did a little bit, was that they, like, just, it had just, like, the episode number, and then as, like, the titles came out, like, then they would change them.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're doing.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, yeah.
But anyway, I think this was probably, so far, one of my favorite episodes. I really liked a lot about it. Let's kind of just talk about our big picture reactions of the episode as a whole. What did you think of this episode?
I don't know what it was, but there was a very, like, there was a difference in the, like, the animation. It seemed very, there was something, maybe it was the fact that, like, the close-up shots, like the coverage, like, close-up shots they had today, either their models or just the lighting that they had for this episode made everything just so realistic. The models moved so brilliantly in this episode that, like, to the point that it at least stood out to me. Everything else has felt like Clone Wars, kind of, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas, as at least with the last episode, that definitely lighting and just animation style looked and felt like a Clone Wars episode. This episode noticeably just in the, I think specifically when, like, they're, like, the ship is crashing and Wrecker and Omega are, like, in the, like, seats. Yeah. Just, like, the close-up shots of Wrecker just are, like, his movements and, like, expressions are just very, very fluid, and just, like, it just looked fantastic in this episode.
Yeah. This show looks so good on my 4K TV. It's like borderline live action.
Imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine.
It is so good, but I can't say I noticed a difference in this episode, but maybe you just, like, you were in the right mindset for this episode.
Well, it maybe just could have been the angle I saw it at, but there was just something about, like, it just felt very realistic on, like, the close-up shots, especially, like, when they were on the ship. A lot of the, like, shots and, like, just the movements of the models looked just really, really good, really fluid, really, really lifelike. Which was cool. I think as for story-wise, I like that they are, like, inching away kind of just, like, the bonding that they're doing, and just, you know, they're getting to the points of the story that it keeps you intrigued each time. So I'm appreciating that each episode is definitely, like, I feel satisfied in what was accomplished, and I am still intrigued to know the rest.
Yeah, I think what this show has been doing so well is letting it get dark and gritty, but not at the expense of keeping it Star Wars and fun.
Yes.
You know, I think that is what I think this show does so well, is we get these moments with, you know, Crosshair and Omega and, you know, all of these really intense moments, especially, we'll talk about it later, but that moment on Onderon left my jaw on the floor. Holy crap.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with all of these dark things that are going on in this episode, it still feels like the lighthearted Star Wars that we love. You know,
it still is able to, like, represent and hold that sense of magic while still overall being a dark and gritty. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of go down the list of things to talk about here. So what are some of your favorite standout just moments of action, anything like that?
I really liked the gunfight of, like, the elite squad taking out Saw Gerrera's rebels. Mm-hmm. The actual, like, gunfight it was. I love how threatening the new troopers are, and just, like, it was a very cool, like, I liked the sense of, like, fear that the rebels had, and they were just kind of watching the whole time, and you don't really see much that happens, and every time the troopers shoot, it's always from the dark trees. That one stood out the most to me, on just kind of, like, that whole Onderon scene is, like we said, just very very intense. It's a very big moment.
I really like a lot of the stuff with Omega on that one moon they landed on.
I really like, just, like, I guess everything that comes with Omega and the little situations and stories that we're able to tell with her.
Well, yeah, we're 3 episodes in and we're already seeing a lot of Omega's development and growth, and her actually being kind of initiated into the Bad Batch, and having the bravery and courage to basically save Hunter and basically save the entire team.
Right.
Which I think we're gonna get some tension within the Bad Batch here soon, because I think the way I'm watching it and the way I'm perceiving it, I think that eventually Crosshair is going to be redeemed.
Yeah.
And he's not going to like that Omega is with them.
Why?
Because I think that I think that he's going to, once he is redeemed, he's going to have kind of this, we can talk about it more once we get to like the predictions, but I think kind of making a short version of it, I think that once he gets redeemed, he's going to have like this disdain for the cloners and Kaminoans, and he doesn't really understand Omega, so he kind of thinks that she's with them, But well, what are some of your favorite kind of, if any moments you noticed of comedy, whimsy, anything like that you liked?
I love this gonk droid that the Bad Batch has.
So
like
good.
It's just that it's like an Easter egg of every time you see him.
Yeah.
This wasn't really a funny episode. This worked a lot on the different things that needed to be done, and I'm trying to think through of just the comedic moments. There really wasn't a lot, I would say, that stood out to me this episode.
Yeah, I think a lot of there isn't really as much comedy as there just like this playfulness aspect between like Wrecker and Omega and like throughout the Bad Batch. But I think it's great. We get some great Wrecker moments too of in the beginning whenever they're eating their rations and Omega offers Wrecker her ration,
right, her a little bit,
and Hunter's like, dude, she's a kid, you gotta let her eat. He's like, oh, okay, all right.
Gideon, will you go lay down? Come on. Okay,
it's okay. This is Through Imperial Ice, starring Gideon,
the dog,
Jackson's dog. But what I was going to say is, I think that they're kind of seeing Omega as, she almost has like a pity party thing going on, because she didn't have anywhere to sleep, she didn't have a bed,
right?
She's kind of being the iPad kid in the corner with the tablet thing and just eating her rations.
They're like, just go play on your thing. We got to figure out how we're not going to be fugitives anymore.
Yeah. But I think we get a lot of great moments on that ship and on the moon and everything with the Bad Batch. But let's kind of talk about a lot of this. I think the interesting aspect of this episode was really grounded in the stuff that happened on Kamino and the elite troopers and stuff. This is the first time I think we're meeting Rampart, except for like the hologram from the last episode. This is the first time we're meeting him in person. What is your impression of Rampart, and what kind of role do you think he's going to play going forward?
Whoever plays him, he sounds like Callus from Rebels.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
No, I kind of like this. Like, you can tell I think Rampart will be more of the political villain rather than Tarkin is. I don't think Tarkin's going to be as into it as now that we've been introduced to Rampart. And I really like the political jargon of A, this show, but B, this episode. I like how like the Kaminoans have to like kind of do like damage control to make sure that like they don't become obsolete, because then their species is at risk. So they have to like figure out a way for the clones to be relevant. And I really like the overall like talk and plan, and just kind of how the Empire is moving forward with its army, and like,
and we're
I
getting
guess
to see like these internal conversations between Tarkin and Rampart.
We're really seeing the nitty gritty of just like what's being discussed and at play.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna end up hating Rampart as much as I hate Tarkin.
Yeah, right.
Not as being a bad character, but just like the things they're doing is making me hate them. But
I think it's kind of funny how the Empire is like, we don't want clones, but we want the best clones to train our new soldiers.
yeah,
Like,
isn't that weird?
like it's like this weird, like ironic fu to like A, the clones, and B, just like the Kaminoans and the Republic. And
I think the main reason that they're so against clones is because they're so signifying of the Republic.
well, I think that, yes. I also think of it in the sense of, while the Empire will make sure that they have as much control,
Yeah.
the Empire doesn't want to take any risk of either the Kaminoans sabotaging, or, the clones themselves weren't necessarily perfect. That's kind of been Tarkin's whole point, is that he needs perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree in the sense of like, they don't want the image of the Republic to be manufactured anymore. But I also would say it as it's a safety point. They don't want the clones to like either be pre-programmed to turn on the Empire, or to have clones gain a sense of morality to turn on the Empire.
Yeah, it's such a slippery slope with the cloning, because I mean, cloning has been rooted in like from the prequels into like every single Star Wars property that's basically been made, it's been rooted in cloning, with like the sequel trilogy and
Right.
Palpatine and his cloning stuff, and we got the basically whole Clone Wars. Yeah, I think that when it comes to the Empire's view on the clones and Tarkin's view on the clones, it is kind of confusing, because they could artificially develop, because I think they mention it in this episode, is that Jango Fett's DNA is kind of diluting, and it's almost like whenever you've shared a meme and saved it, and then you share it again, and then it's saved again.
It's just died out.
Yeah, it's just like
worthless.
Yeah, it's basically becoming there's like 4 pixels. Like that's all that's left.
And maybe that's what like Tarkin and the Empire know, is that the DNA isn't as sustainable anymore, so the clones aren't going to be as good.
Right, and that's why at the end of the episode here, we have Lama Su basically saying, hey, this isn't working anymore, we need to go to phase 3, and I don't know what that means.
I don't know what it means either.
She basically said that they have like, I'm assuming they have some other subject they can use to clone, and whether that'll be someone who's force sensitive, someone like, or like one of the Bad Batch. I don't know.
I would have. Well, so when they talked about it, he goes, returning them is going to be difficult, but we need only one, which leads me to believe that they need one of the Bad Batch, but they're probably going to get Omega. I think that's what's going to happen, is they're going to take Omega. There's something about Omega that we don't fully know yet, and that is why she's
that's a good theory, yeah.
Like she's worth something. So I think Kaminoans are going to take her to make her the new prime subject.
Interesting. I didn't think about that. Yeah, because I think Omega does have to play some kind of role.
Right, and like, why was she on Kamino? And they said, what was the line? What's funny? We say that is Star Wars Today tweeted this. It was like new Bad Batch episode out, but the screen caps that they used, it was 4 images of lines, and it was from either I think it was the first one, with the line of the Kaminoans don't do anything without a purpose. Like, what's her purpose? So I think that's kind of what it's playing, is that she is phase 3.
Interesting. Yeah, I saw some theory video about how they could be bringing in Starkiller and cloning Star, kind of like the arc from Force Unleashed 2.
Okay, yeah.
I don't like that though. I don't want that.
I don't like that idea fully, but like, if you took aspects of it, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how detrimental that would be to kind of the shifting of the tide with canon, and how it could work into the canon.
I think if you did Starkiller, you should do it a little later and have it more focused on something with Vader.
Yeah, I just don't like the idea of Starkiller, really. I just think...
I don't like the idea of making Starkiller canon. If you're going to do something like that, take the idea, don't take the whole concept.
Yeah, I don't know. But, yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see where they're going with that, too. But with the Elite Troopers, this is kind of our first look at the the first recruits, probably the first stormtroopers ever, basically, recruited stormtroopers. What are kind of your thoughts on the elite troopers and how they are in this episode?
The there was one of them, the one that like made a comment while they were on the ship, because there was the one blonde dude that ended up getting killed, and he's like calling out Crosshair, and then the one girl says something. The one girl looks and sounds like Iden Versio to me.
Oh yeah.
And I don't necessarily think it is her. I think they would have made it more of a point, but if it is, I think that'll be a really, really cool Easter egg. Is that
That'd be
like
really
it's part of Iden's like first kind of introduction with the Empire, a little Easter egg homage. No, I liked it. I loved the initial tension, and I love how Crosshair like still proved right. Like he still like outshowed these new stormtroopers, kind of proving that like clones in this point like can be stronger soldiers. Yeah. Especially when they're programmed to follow any order that matters.
Yeah, and he was basically saying like on that transport on the way to Onderon, he was basically like, hey, the clone troopers are basically no more use to the Empire. And, he was saying like basically trying to get under Crosshair's skin, and Crosshair just basically completely negated everything he said.
It doesn't even care.
Yeah. But I think that when it comes to like the relationship between the elite troopers and Crosshair, it's just so it's so detrimental, because whenever they think they're so tough and strong and skillful, and then as soon as they're on the battlefield and like they have to kill civilians, they're like, whoa man,
right,
that's totally not cool. And they kind of have to go through their own little journey of, oh crap, what am I getting myself into?
Right. Yeah, I think it's funny how the like Tarkin and the Empire really push the idea that recruited soldiers are going to be the next movement, and how like they will just be as like strong and like secure and structured, and then the first time that they have to do evil Empire stuff, like they all kind of freak out, and it has to be the clone that brings them back in.
Yeah, it's weird, because
it's just like this weird ironic it's like very hypocritical. Like it's a very hypocritical situation where like if you really look at the nitty gritty, like none of it really makes sense. They're just being evil just to do it.
And we have that scene where they're like, the Republic never did anything for me, but the Empire gave me money, a roof over my head,
food, bed, water.
Food, so like that's kind of, I'm glad we get to see at least this point of view of, some people are actually benefiting from the Empire, and it's not all just this black and white, like Empire is bad. It's a little more difficult than that. And I think
there's it's a mixed bag of how people view it. Yeah.
And I think that, kind of looking at whenever Rampart was like, the recruits will be so much better because they have this like unspoken loyalty to the Empire and all of that. But couldn't you just program clones to be loyal to the Empire?
I think it's more in the aspect of what you were saying about like the view of the Republic. That's when that comes into play, because like the Empire needed the loyalty from everybody in order to sustain itself, because people did, obviously, at least from Bad Batch, enough people don't take it fully seriously to understand it as a threat.
Yeah.
So that's why they're really striving on we defeated the Republic that's been taking from you for so long. Come help us. Come join us. We need soldiers. We need people to fight for this new empire that we formed to save you all. And everyone's like, oh yeah, absolutely, like for sure.
Yeah, the Empire is so like, we gotta do it our way. And if it's not our way, it's not happening.
It's not our way, then you're getting killed, then.
Yeah, pretty much. But let's kind of talk about that. Really, it's really dark for Star Wars animation and just Star Wars in general, of whenever they basically have to take out those innocent civilians that were on Onderon. That kind of like, I was shocked watching that.
It's the when Crosshair said "Good soldiers follow orders" and then shot the other elite trooper.
Yeah.
And he just walked away like that. And then the one dude with the flamethrower, when he first showed up, I gasped. I was just like, they just set that man on fire. Like,
yeah, this whole sequence is just so dark and intense. And it's not something that I expected out of that moment. I thought it was just going to be like some kind of scuffle, and Saw Gerrera's guys get away. Yeah. And no, they just straight up slaughter all of them. And
I am excited to see the Bad Batch face off this elite squad. I want to see how intense of a fight it actually is,
or how long this elite squad's even going to last.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, of how like actually they could have sustainable they are.
What if these first few recruits, they kind of go the Finn route of like they thought they wanted it, and they finally go on the battlefield and they're like, oh wait, this is all awful. Evil. Yeah. So
yeah, well, and that guy made that he says that he goes this is wrong and we're not doing it, all of us, and they all kind of look at each other for a minute, and it's obvious that like they get stuck in that position of not being able to do anything, especially when Crosshair kills him. But it's you can definitely tell that they all had to at least, like, they're at least considering it, and had to take a moment to kind of be like,
Yeah, I think if I was in that position and, I was just desperate for, money, food, and shelter, and all I had to do was just be employed by the Empire. But then it's kind of like a life for a life, like.
Well, and that's probably how the Empire got a lot of its soldiers. Is I bet you even just the most vulnerable people. Yeah, on Coruscant alone, they just went to the lower levels and was just like, need a better life, join the Empire. Like,
yeah, and we see that in the future. Like, remember in Solo when
I was just thinking that in the train.
That recruit hologram, and we see that all over Rebels too. It's all over Rebels. Join the Empire today, and like the weird like
the big march.
the weird like in canon Imperial march.
Yeah. That plays in Battlefront 2 whenever you play the Empire at the start of a game. It always plays the Imperial march when like you're all running to the battle.
That's awesome. Let's kind of talk about on that moon, and I think Omega has the biggest kind of she gets the biggest growth so far, I think, because she's essentially she, not to them, but I think at first we kind of are led to expect that Omega is like this dead weight with the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
And then in this one, she kind of like is able to hold her own and kind of, she basically is the reason they were able to get off the moon and everything like that. What do you think of just Omega's growth in this episode?
She's brave. There's something in her programming that gives her just that clone bravery. And I think the other thing too is, she says a line that I wish they kind of went a little more in. I know that they will eventually, but she says it. She goes, when she comes back out of the little like tunnel cave after like getting the piece and doesn't, she doesn't attack the monster and
the Ordo moon dragon.
Yes. She goes to Hunter and is like, I tracked it just like you. And you're like, just like him? Like, did you do your own thing or did you do exactly what he did? Because he can sense like vibrations and like energy and stuff. Right. He's able to. Rambo. His tracking is a little his tracking is a little more specific. Or did you just follow the footsteps?
That's why I'm wondering if Omega has like a little bit of Bad Batch of each of them in her.
Yeah,
and like once she fully like is able to unlock all of these skills, she's like the ultimate clone.
That which furthers my point that that's what
feeds to your theory that the Phase 3 is Omega clones.
It's because she's literally she's this perfect soldier.
Man, yeah,
that's awesome.
I wonder because, well, we can kind of get into this now, so we can segue off of this next point I'm about to make with Wrecker's headache. How he hits his head and he keeps complaining about his head, but he's been shot in the arm before and hasn't complained about it. What's up with this? And I think it's his inhibitor chip.
Yeah, I think so as well.
And do you think that he will start to adapt the programming of the rest of the clones? And like,
I think what will happen is that either Wrecker will kind of snap for a moment and they'll have to stop him. I don't know what the context would be, but you know what? Actually, you know what would be fun is if they go and find Rex and Ahsoka's with them, and Wrecker freaks out because he sees a Jedi.
Oh yeah.
And so they have to stop him. But I think the overall part of it is that they will learn how, like, I think they'll be able to, like, not, I say dissect, that's like the most extreme, but I think they'll be able to learn how the inhibitor chip works. Maybe they reverse it on Wrecker to fix him, and then they're like,
or maybe when they do meet up with Rex helps them get the inhibitor chips out of their heads.
Oh yeah, maybe I forgot Rex has been investigating it. Yeah, he probably knows some more of how to fix it. And then I would assume that because of that, they decide to go try and save Crosshair and essentially fix Crosshair.
Yeah.
Because they're just kind of on the run right now. And they've hinted at it expanding. You know, they kind of talk about Crosshair's redemption. And there's that interesting scene where he comes home. He comes back to their Camino base and he just kind of sits by himself. And I think it's interesting how the whole episode, especially Omega, is just kind of like he can't help it. Like it's not his fault. And it's like Crosshair starting to realize that. Crosshair starting to understand kind of everything that's happening. And he's starting to process that it's not really him making these decisions.
Yeah. And I think that's why I think that Crosshair is redeemable, because whenever he does go back into like their quarters and like he sees, you know, the tally marks on the wall, and he kind of goes to his old bunk and he's like, man, what have I done?
Yeah, he's like, what? Yeah, he like doesn't recognize anything anymore.
Yeah, and I think that further again feeds to my point that I think we're going to see a Crosshair redemption, but it's not going to be a smooth redemption. It's going to be,
do you think,
a conditional redemption?
Do you think he will redeem conditional? How do you mean conditional redemption?
Meaning certain things have to happen in order for him to,
okay.
You know.
Do you think it'll be something like he'll redeem himself, come back to the good side, and stay around, or do you think he may die?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
Pull a Vader?
Yeah, I don't know, because I'm almost thinking that a lot of the Bad Batch will actually end up dying by the end of the series. I don't know about the season, but the end of the series.
I kind of think that as well, is that over time it'll start picking them off, but I also don't think that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that would make the most sense for how to explain why they aren't around in the future.
But like, there's also a lot of other options of what could happen, you know? Yeah,
I think at this point, with what we know now, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's kind of talk about, are there any standout themes that you can think of in this episode that kind of spoke to you?
I think the big one is definitely, I can't word it the best, but bravery is definitely a common kind of, I think, theme in this whole show. But this episode kind of easily showcases it, to where more minimal things of like Hunter and Omega deciding to go find the Ordo Moondragon, to Omega herself going after the dragon and the piece herself. And that's kind of the big, encapsulated moment of bravery. But yeah, I don't know. There wasn't a big theme that stood out to me in this, besides, I would say, the bravery.
Yeah, I think at the end here, we get a lot of, with Wrecker giving Omega her own room for the first time, and the way she kind of reacts to that, like, I've never had this before.
Right.
And, it says a lot about, found family and, again, choices. Star Wars is always choices.
And the Bad Batch has done a very good job at treating Omega like an actual person.
Yeah.
Because they all kind of like, whatever, kid. And then she's like, but I'm here. Like, I'm here to help. So let me help. And then they're all kind of like, all right, yeah, like,
right.
circumstances are different. This isn't necessary. You're not just here for the ride. That is true. You are on the run with us. Like,
yeah. And again, with the whole theme of choice, we see that even with the elite troopers, and they one of them doesn't want to slaughter innocent people. And yeah, I think that I'm excited to see where else, because so far this show has just like, I don't know what's going to happen next ever. It's just so unpredictable. Right. So it'll be interesting to see where this show next is actually going, because we're still very early.
Are they going somewhere specifically?
They didn't say. I think they're just kind of going off to the next adventure.
They're just traveling. Yeah,
I think they'll establish that next week.
Probably, yeah, most likely.
Yeah, but do you have any other just closing thoughts, things you wanted to talk about with this episode, anything like that?
No, I think I'm good. I think we kind of discussed everything that was of importance.
Well, cool. Yeah, I think, again, like I said, I want to know what phase 3 is. Tell me.
Right.
We'll find out, but I think that's the most intriguing part of this episode to me, is the whole they do have a backup plan if they're not keeping producing the clones that we already have. And it'll be interesting to see how the clones do kind of fade out of the entire inside of the Empire. So
I actually kind of have a theory about what will happen with clones and the Kaminoans.
What's that?
Is that this will probably be the end of the season, but I think the Empire is going to destroy Kamino.
Oh, you think so?
Is that essentially they'll get everything that they have, and once they have a full functional like army, they'll go. And it probably story-wise, to have the Bad Batch be there, is that within episodes, Omega will be taken to Kamino to start it. The Bad Batch is going to go save her, and while that happens, the Empire attacks Kamino.
Oh man.
And it's just like this huge mess. Like, I could be dead wrong, but I think that.
Well, I think that we even see it in The Mandalorian, Dr. Pershing with the Mandalorian, the Kaminoan symbol on his thing. I wonder if either Kamino won't exist anymore, and there's just like some, grandfathered in Kaminoans, or like somehow the Empire got a hold of the technology, and they're still using the Kaminoan,
power
logo as the as like the cloning logo or something like that. But I don't know. It's you bring up an interesting point. I think
I think the Empire needs to take out Kamino, because if Kamino themselves can't produce anything for the Empire, they can be a threat to the Empire, and the Empire just will not tolerate that.
Yeah.
So that's what these early episodes are, is it's all the talking phase. And then I think what's going to happen is that Kamino, like the Kamino Prime Minister and Tarkin, are going to like hardcore disagree, and that's going to be it. And
Tarkin's going to be like, fetch me my Death Star.
Like, we're done. Yeah, we're done here. Like, I'm going to go get my people. Then I'm going to show you the true power of the Empire. This would also be a good time to show Vader if you want to show him in this new animation.
That would be cool. Do you think that they will destroy the planet of Kamino somehow, or they'll just destroy the cloning facility?
They probably don't have the power to destroy the planet, so they'll probably do it in the sense of a good old-fashioned invasion, and they're just gonna take control. And that would play into them having the accessibility of Kaminoan technology, is that they just essentially wiped out the Kaminoans but kept their planet and all their technology and stuff.
Just take what they need and go. Yeah,
repurposed it to the Empire.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. I subscribe to that theory. If that's going to happen, I think that would be an interesting butting of heads, because we're already seeing that, in these first 3 episodes.
Kind of playing in.
They don't get along. The Kaminoans and the Empire do not get along. So,
well, cool.
Awesome. I think I've said all I need to say about this episode. I'm excited for next week whenever we talk about episode 4, whatever that'll be titled, because I think a lot of people who had like the early access for Bad Batch got to see the first 3 episodes. So now we're in uncharted territory.
So now we don't know.
Yeah. So, that'll be, I wonder if they're going to take it a different direction. Who knows? But I think that's all we have. If you want to find us on social media, you can always find us on Instagram at @ThroughImperializedPod, and on Twitter at @ImperializedPod, and YouTube. You're watching it right now, but if you're not, you can search us. We're just Through Imperialized Podcast on YouTube. Jackson, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, as always, at Quackson Scalene. That's Quackson, and scaling like the triangle. And then you can follow my photography Instagram at Deleen_photography, and Deleen spelled Daleen. You know the rest. Braydon, what about you?
And as always, you can find me on Instagram at braydonleadbetter and on Twitter at braydathlon. And please, guys, don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Leave that Apple review. Leave that rating on Apple Podcasts. It really helps out the show whenever you do that. Follow us on Spotify, the rest of those podcast streaming platforms that you kids use. You young
whippersnappers and your multiple social medias.
Your TikToks and your ping pongs and whatever else you got.
And your gabagool and your
gabagool. Well, next week we will have another news episode, just digging into all the juicy Star Wars news, and then we'll also, of course, be back for another episode of the Batch Report, where we'll talk about episode 4. But I think until then, may the Force be with you. Bye.